Welcome to GreenSong Changemaker series, episode 1 of 8. Happy Samhain, everyone. My name is Alexian, and I'm your co-host, along with grandmother Elspeth. Now, she'll be along in a little while to introduce our guest speaker and entertainment for the evening. But I wanted to say it's been my pleasure to prepare at the last minute for this and to stream this entire series to you live from my studio here in Orlando, Florida. Before we get started, I have a favor to ask. I really do. I actually want you to make change. After all, this is called the Changemaker series, right? So that means we have to take personal responsibility. And one of the ways we can do that right now in this moment is to share this live broadcast with your friends and family. So seriously, right now, I want you to grab your phone if you're watching or if you're on your computer, click that share button and share it to your feed on Facebook, or even on if you're watching on YouTube, you can take the link and share it via text message or even email it to your friends and family. Tonight's broadcast will be about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours. It's going to be amazing. I've seen some of the video, so you're in for a treat. But yeah, make the change, share the broadcast. So I have to say that GreenSong Foundation itself, as well as this Changemaker series, was all created by our own grandmother Elspeth. And it is the year of her 90th birthday. Let that sink in for a moment. Happy birthday, Elspeth, first of all. And I'm so happy to be able to do this for you and for GreenSong. But think about this. Here is a woman who is just turned 90 years old. And at 90 years old, she is actively making change in the world, right? She is reaching out and trying to influence others and the planet in a positive way. She's just amazing, and she's such an inspiration. Now, tonight, we want you to be interactive. And in fact, Anita is standing by in the comment section, watching your comments, and we want you to post. We want you to ask questions. We want you to comment. If you're enjoying the speaker or the entertainment, we want you to voice your opinion. And of course, being Elspeth's 90th birthday, I'm sure she would be thrilled to see your comments wishing her a happy 90th birthday. Now, also, if you're on YouTube, let's get real for a second. GreenSong is just starting to build their YouTube channel. And so what I am asking you personally to do is to, first of all, subscribe. You know, that red button, subscribe to GreenSong's YouTube channel. But also like this video, because that affects the analytics and the algorithms of YouTube and helps push it up higher in the list for people to discover. And the last thing, the third thing, is we want you to ring our bell. You know that old song, Ring My Bell, You Can Ring My Bell? Well, we want you to ring our bell. And what that bell does on YouTube, if you're not familiar, is that it actually will notify you when a video is posted to GreenSong's YouTube, especially these live streaming events, okay? So, of course, it's an 8-week series. This is going to happen every Saturday at the same location and at the same time. But life gets busy, so, you know, you'll get a little bing and it'll remind you, oh yeah, that's right, GreenSong's tonight, and you'll tune in. And then you can be interactive and actually talk to us and be part of the live excitement. Also, I should mention that there is an auction happening over on GreenSongFestival.com. That's GreenSongFestival.com. I hear that Grandmother Elspeth herself has a few pieces of artwork up for sale, so you're definitely going to go want to check that out. And of course, I would be remiss if I don't mention that we're trying to build this. And with anything, you need energy behind it. Well, money is stored energy. And so, yes, we have a donate link. And that donate link is bit.ly/GS-donate. That's bit.ly/GS-donate. So if you're in attunement and you're feeling what GreenSong is all about and what their mission is all about, give. Even if it's $5, it'll go a long way. Thank you so much. Now, speaking of GreenSong's mission, let us now pray for our mother. May all I say and all that I think be in harmony with thee. Earth Mother within me, Earth Mother beyond me, maker of the trees, the stones, the fields, and the people. Earth Mother, to thee we give thanks for your love. That is a traditional Chinook prayer. Isn't it beautiful? Okay, so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Grandmother Elspeth.
Hello, everybody. I'm Grandmother Elspeth, and I'm sitting on my back porch underneath my wisteria vine. Yes, this is all one vine. Welcome. I'm here to host the Changemaker series, the current offering of GreenSong. We are bringing you the best we can at this point. The best speakers, the best musicians, and of course, me. As I will talk about a few things in between. One thing I need to mention to you, we are running an online auction at GreenSongFestival.com. Primarily Nybor's work, some of it originals, some of it prints. I have a couple of pieces there too, wall hangings that I made back in the days when I was making my living as a fabric sculptor. So I welcome you to this, and while I don't know most of our speakers, I am well acquainted with all of our musicians, well, except one. So I will be introducing to you people that I have not had opportunity to hear. And the first one is Byron Ballard. I almost met Byron when I was in in North Carolina first. I didn't quite meet her. I understand she is quite prolific with her teachings and her books. Presently, she is working on a new book about Appalachian folkways and another on permaculture for pagans, which really, really intrigues me. She has co-founded the Grove Goddess Temple and the Coalition of Earth Religions in Asheville, North Carolina. She has much to offer. Please welcome Byron Ballard.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me here in my kitchen. I am here, as I have been for most of my life, and as my ancestors were for many, many years, many centuries, in fact, coming to you from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, the Southern Highlands, we call them. We immigrated here, my family, beginning in the late 17th century, so we've been here a long time. We have what I call deep and gnarly roots here. So I've been doing a lot of Zooming this year, as we all have, and I mostly have been doing it from my kitchen, because the kitchen for me, and for a lot of us, is the heart of our home, the heart and hearth of who we are and where we are. So today, I'm talking to you about some concepts that I'm still grappling with myself. And I invite you to contact me with your own ideas, with what your community is doing as regards all of this, which I will engage with you in just a moment. What got me started, I always like to tell the backstory. You know, we Appalachian people, we always like to tell a story to go with whatever we're doing. The backstory of this is my precious daughter, who is a grown woman, as we say in the South, a grown-ass woman now. And when she was coming up, I worried sometimes that having a mother who was a leftist, who was a witch, who was a very visible member of the pagan community, would somehow give her this place where she would have to be so opposite me in every way that she would become a Baptist cheerleader, all that stuff, ultra uber capitalist. But in fact, what she did was become more Marxist than thou. So my daughter will sometimes, when I complain about something that's happening in the popular culture, she'll say, "Mom, come on now. Don't get lured into this end stage capitalism, okay?" And it always makes me laugh, because the last thing in the world I ever want to do is to get lured in to final capitalism, if that in fact is where we are. So what I'm talking to you about today is animism. I'm going to talk about permaculture a little bit. I'm going to talk about regenerative agriculture, because yes, I walk in the world a pagan path, but my pagan path is deeply rooted in the earth. And it's not deeply rooted in the earth in some sort of symbolic way. It is deeply rooted into the cycle of the seasons as I experience them in this land that my people have tended for hundreds of years. So this is work of not only hands, but also heart. And it also has to be the work of head. So when we put all those things together, we begin to look at a path that is spiritual and intensely physical. We begin to look at a way of being that is not just 8 holy days a year and the occasional full moon. What I am imploring people to consider is that who we are as minority religionists and as people who are regularly othered, I want you to consider that that is the place, that is the seed from which new life can grow. So for years now, I have been talking about, teaching about, praying about, yelling about something that I call tower time. In fact, I've written a book about it, came out 2 years ago, called Earthworks, Ceremonies in Tower Time. Now it's based, of course, on the card and the tarot. And I've been reading cards for more than 50 years. So I'm very, very familiar with that card and all of the deeper and lesser meanings of it. But Tower Time, I believe, is the time we live in right now. And we are watching these big top-down systems. I always have to make a little pyramid. We're watching these big top-down systems collapse. We're watching them collapse and recalibrate as they fall. And the recalibration is the dangerous stage for all of us in the culture. But the point is that all of these top-down cultures, these top-down systems that we have been living with for thousands of years, frankly, they are in place because they're efficient and because they are comfortable to us. It's a system we're used to. When we start to look at other kinds of systems where there's not a single leadership or a big boss on the top that kind of trickles everything down to the people that actually run everything, when we start to look at systems that are not about that, we get a little frisson of fear because we're just not used to anything that's not that. So the danger for us as these systems begin to collapse, recalibrate, collapse a little bit more, is that we are going to restructure them in such a way that we put back the structure that we are trying to get rid of. I need everyone to understand the problem is the structure. The problem is not who is on top of the structure. The problem is that when you put a single person or a trio of people on the top and you expect everything to run downhill to the people on the bottom who support and nurture these systems, we're asking these systems to do something they just simply can't do. So if we want more egalitarian systems, we have to do systems analysis. We have to look at how the systems operate, how they work. And then we have to figure out how we fix them and not how we tweak them, because again and again in our long human history, we have changed whoever was sitting on top of it. And we haven't changed the system. So that we don't like that fella that's in charge right now. But as soon as we get rid of him, everything's going to be fine. Well, the problem in the person on top, the problem is the structure itself. So when I talk about tower time, I am inviting the people who are capable of doing it, who are capable of this kind of strange lateral, but also deep thinking. I'm asking them to consider how it is we begin to create circles on the ground that will replace these top-down systems. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so I'm going to define a few terms for you. So there was tower time. It's the time that I believe we are privileged to live in, where we can reconstruct and unconstruct the world that all of us are so familiar with. This is the time we're living in right now. And heaven knows, in the time of COVID, that has been writ large, not only here, but across the world. So it is a time when we are looking at systems. We are looking at systems that do not behave well. And those, as you well know, are education, healthcare, religion, government, almost anything you can think of that is structured in this top-down and hierarchical way is in a state of imbalance and a potential flux. So we are here, we thinkers, we feelers, and we doers. We are here to figure out what the next stage needs to be. And yes, I'm as big a hippie as many of you also are, and we have dreamed dreams of utopian nirvanas. But the problem with all of that is you can't just dream it, you have to do it. And that's what I'm here to suggest to you that we need to get on doing right now. So as these systems fall, and as we watch them fall, we as minority communities are uniquely suited to do this work. 2 years ago, I was invited up to Pittsburgh, a place that I love, that is very dear to my heart. I was invited up to Pittsburgh for their Pagan Pride Day. And I was supposed to give the keynote address, and I had, as I have here today, a sheaf of papers. And I was going to give a lovely address about building community and the importance of keeping community whole and wholesome, and how to do, you know, all that stuff that all of us talk about all the time, building community, weave in the basket of the community that we hold. And I looked out over the audience, and some of y'all might have been in that audience, and there we were. And we were wearing utilikilts and sarongs and beautiful ritual robes, and some of us had big old swords at our sides, and some of us had funny hats. And I just looked out and I said, you know what? We are the island of misfit toys. We dream all the time of our warrior ancestors, and we watch shows like Vikings and Game of Thrones, and we hearken back to this beautiful medieval time when there was no indoor plumbing and people died young. And we love that. We love it. And we dream that we are those people, but we're not. We're the island of misfit toys. And I'm here to tell you that is our superpower. We always think outside the box because we were never allowed inside the box. We were never in there to begin with, so we don't have to break out. We are out here on the outside already looking at ways that we can restructure, recreate, and reanimate our relationship with the world. I have a book coming out. You know, everybody's got a book coming out. I got a book coming out next summer. It is tentatively called, I have to look it up because it's so tentative, Seasons of a Magical Life, A Pagan Path of Living. And it is the story of the wheel of the year on a small farm and how you not only honor the cycle of the seasons, but you get so deeply embedded into them that there is no room for difference between you and that. So it's not us just saying, I love nature or I'm a part of nature. The phrase that I use throughout the book is the phrase acknowledged kinship. So you are choosing to say, just as many of us have chosen our families, you are choosing to say, not only do I have connections to that tree that I can see outside my window or to this table in front of me, but in fact, there is a kinship there that I'm choosing to acknowledge and to say, we are all related. And so when we get to talking about animism is the notion that everything is ensouled. So certainly you and I are ensouled. Well, most of us are. Have y'all ever run across somebody and you just looked at them and listened to them for a minute and you thought, I don't even know that you've got a soul. Not something I could acknowledge as a soul anyway. So the idea of animism is that everything is ensouled. This table is, that tree is, the dog, the cat, you and I. Everything has a shred, a glimmer of that thing that we refer to as soul or spirit. Somebody referred on Facebook today, referred to rocks as not being living creatures. And I thought for a minute, I suppose by most definitions, a rock is not a living creature, but you and I both probably know rocks and maybe have rocks in the backyard or on a shelf that you know absolutely is as living a creature as you are. The example I sometimes give is that I've raised broccoli and I've raised chickens, and broccoli is just as sentient as chickens. It's just not as mobile. So the notion that everything is ensouled changes us. When we bear that as something we don't have to think of as an intellectual exercise, but as something that is a given in our world, it changes so much within and around us. And we're going to come back to that in just a few minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about permaculture today, but not so much about that. But permaculture is a set of design principles that are centered around the idea that systems should be and are at their healthiest holistic, that they stimulate each other, that they utilize the patterns that each lays down in order to be in a symbiotic relationship. And these are used, it used to be only because when we called it permaculture gardening, it was just about growing things. But we've come now to use permaculture principles when we talk about community organizing, when we talk about community resilience, when we talk about that thing that all pagans love, the idea of rewilding. So we are expanding the concepts of permaculture into all sorts of places that it seems to fit perfectly beautifully. We're going to start now by looking at where we live. And I don't know where y'all live, but I live in the United States of America. And so much about Western culture as it has been made manifest here is about taking, utilizing, profiting, and collecting and saving, which is not It's not about permaculture, is it? It's about taking what you need out of the environment, and I use that term very broadly, taking what you need out of the environment, using it for your own ends, whether that is for profit or to feed your family or whatever, and not giving back into the system. It would be as if you were trying to grow a garden and you put your whole garden in, and over the course of the summer, you harvested everything. Then you pulled the plants out, and you never returned any of the nutrients to the soil that had been taken out by your gardening. And what happens over time, because yeah, you can get away with that for a while. What happens over time is that as the nutrients are continue to be leached out of the soil, that the soil grows weak, and eventually the soil is no longer vital, and it is dead soil. So the symbiotic relationship of the grower to the soil is one that is deep and profound, and maybe one of the deepest and most profound parts of that symbiotic relationship. We also live, in addition to being a country which has almost completely uncontrolled capitalism, we live in a country that has an overlay of veneer of Protestant Christianity. And that is because of our founders, our European founders of this nation, not obviously the First Nations people who were on this land when the Europeans arrived. So this Protestant Christianity that is writ large in the Thanksgiving story, gosh, don't we all remember the fourth grade stories of our pilgrim ancestors, and they're sharing their feast with the poor benighted natives? I like to think we have come a little ways since then. But what that kind of Protestant Christianity says to us, and frankly what most of Christianity says to us in its thin veneer over our culture, is that this is not our home. This planet that we live on, that gives us everything we could possibly want and need, is not our home. So our home is someplace in heaven, and if we behave by certain standards, then we will achieve that goal upon our deaths. But being a steward of the land is not necessarily part of that. And even the definition of what a steward of the land is compromised throughout this Protestant Christianity. So if that is one of the foundings of this culture and of this country, and if that is one of the guiding lights of who we are, almost as an essential place, what place does that leave for the notion of all things being ensouled? If you are where I am right now, and as I am sitting here with you, it is days before the election. If you are where I am right now, there are fears I have for what I think of as the soul of the nation. So I am already thinking of the nation as a thing that is ensouled, just as you and I are. So if I fear for the soul of the nation, how does that compare with me thinking about animism? So I'm going to tell you where I go with that. We're funny people, and I'm going to tell you a secret about me. It's an open secret, most people know. I am a reincarnation agnostic, and the reason I am is because we don't understand either time or space, not really. And so for us to have a notion that time travels in this linear fashion, so that when we go back in time, there is this place where I was this person and I behaved in this way. But we also don't really have a notion that time moves forward linearly in a way that we can actually touch. So I'm asking you to rethink time and space. And that may be the hardest thing I ever ask of you for the rest of our time together. So if you are thinking of time as something that moves in a particular way, rather than a chaotic jumble of things, of energies, of energetic pulses, of human impulses. If you can begin to broaden your notion of time and to broaden your notion of space, then we can also start to look at how those systems interact. So when we look at the microcosm of us locally to the macrocosm of multiverses, then we can begin to structure our heads around thinking very big thoughts and then narrowing them down into action plans. Oh, I feel like a city planner when I talk this way, and I guess in a way I am, but I'm kind of planning villages instead of big cities. So let's see. So if we stretch our time out in our heads, we stretch space out in our heads, and then here we are standing on the edge of galaxies, and we are dreaming a vast new world. Isn't that beautiful? That's something you can really get off on when it's midsummer and there's a bonfire and you've maybe had some delicious things that have loosened your imagination and your libido. Maybe you're dancing naked around a fire, because those of y'all who know me know that if there is a fire and I can be naked, I will be dancing around it without clothes, sans culotte. So once we can get into that bliss place of time, space, infinite, I think I have a grasp of infinite, then I'm going to ask you to do something that is confusing at the very best. And that is, I want you to think with your head. I want you to feel with your heart. I want you to reach out with your hands universally, globally. I want you to grieve what needs to be grieved globally, universally. When the ice caps are thawing and you are thinking in not human time, not even 7 generations before and 7 generations after, but when you can set yourself in a place of thinking about it in geologic time, then you can grieve the loss of the ice shelf. You can grieve the forest burning. And that can take up all of your life. That can take up all of your life force and all of your energy. So I'm asking you to do 2 things. I'm asking you to think broadly, and to reach for concepts that no one's ever reached for before. And then I'm asking you to bring it all in. I'm asking you to grieve globally and to act locally. When I talk about this, the example I often use are the non-documented immigrant children at the southern border. So all the people I know, and probably all of y'all, when we hear about that terrible situation at the border, our first inclination is, what can I do? What can I do? And yes, you can write letters, you can write to your Congress people, you can do all of those things. You can do protests, you can sign online petitions. There are all those things that we have been trained through social media to do. You can write a check, you can do all those things. The effectiveness of all of that is questionable. But what you can do then is say, if my concern is the children on the southern border, and I can have almost no agency in that situation, I'm asking you to bring it home. I'm asking you to look around your community and to find out what little children need where you are. Little brown children, all the little children. Find out what those children need where you are. If your passion is about what happens to little children, pull that all home and find out what they need. Find out how many children in your county or in your city go to bed hungry, because there's a statistic out there for that. Find out what children need foster parents. You can find all that stuff out. So you can be incredibly effective locally in ways that you can't be effective on a national, an international, or global level. Now, I'm not telling you not to write a check to children's charities all over the world. I'm not asking you to not support Doctors Without Borders. I'm saying if you want to be effective, you bring it home and you support the same things in your home area that you would support globally, because your dollar will go farther. If you are a person who is blessed to be able to write a check, your dollar goes farther. If you are a person who has a strong back, you can go out and volunteer and really make a difference locally. And I'm going to segue now to the notion of mutual aid societies. And that's an important part of thinking about retooling from capitalism as a foundational thought for our nation to animism. I've been talking a lot lately, my throat gets dry. Mutual aid societies is what they sometimes call them, but mutual aid groups are springing up all over. And that is one of, I hesitate to even say this, but it's one of the blessings of COVID. So one of the blessings of this pandemic is that we're trying to figure out how it is we do for ourselves when there were times when we would wait for an agency of some sort, either local or federal, to do it for us. And what has sprung up are a number of things. I want to talk about a few of them. These mutual aid groups, and you will often see them in social media. I see a lot of them in Facebook, some in Twitter. Facebook is a really good possibility. And they're springing up over and over again. I did a post yesterday about what mutual aid places were there in the western counties of our state to see what was available and what perhaps could be formed. There's some wonderful mutual aid societies in other parts of Appalachia, in Kentucky, and in West Virginia specifically. So what a mutual aid society does, it's a group of people that come together, or they don't come together given COVID time, but they come together in their intent to make sure that that circle of people is supported in every way possible. And as with all groups of people, it's imperative that you play to your strengths. So you evaluate what that group of people, what they are good at and what they bring to the table. So you see, we're already starting to collapse this structure a little bit. We're not saying that there is one leader who's going to assign roles to everyone. We're saying that we're all going to come and sit in my kitchen. We're going to sit at the table. Once we get past COVID, we're going to sit at the table and we're going to figure out how it is we're going to solve a particular problem. And what grows from that is a group that is not only solving particular problems, but they are themselves resources within their community. What we have learned, well, really what we have learned since Hurricane Katrina, is that again and again we see that the first responders to any disaster, whether it is a natural disaster or a human-made disaster, the first responders are often also the victims of the disaster. So when you can wrap your head around, when you can let your brain expand past when the hell is FEMA going to get here, if you can think past that and think we are likely to have this kind of disaster given what our land mass is. We have a giant river that runs through, so flooding is a possibility. We live in mountains, landslides are a possibility. If you can think in those general terms about the potential pieces of disaster, you can know how it is you can begin to prepare when you, in fact, are going to be one of the first responders as the water is leaking through your roof. So embracing that, embracing the concept of mutual aid, and embracing the concept that we no longer wait and see who's going to fix it. We step up, we bear some responsibility and personal authority, and we step forward. Now, indigenous societies have been doing this since time out of mind. And when we were an indigenous society, we European Americans, we did this too. So we don't have to reinvent this wheel. That wheel's already invented. And I want to give you a couple of really good resources that will start you out if this feels all new to you. There's a book called All We Can Save, and it's an environmental treatise. And I will quickly look up who that author is. But the one I really want to talk to you about is called Sacred Instructions. It came out in 2018, and the author is a member of the Penobscot tribe. Her name is Sherry Mitchell. Sherry Mitchell, Sacred Instructions. It's a wonderful book. She's a very good, clear writer, and she's also a lawyer and an activist, and she speaks in ways that they're not just pie in the sky. They are actual, practical responses to what we can do in the world. Okay, All We Can Save the subtitle is Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis. And it's got, its editors are Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson and one other, but it's a combined book of essays, and I highly recommend both of those books so that you can begin thinking like an indigenous person who cares about the land. And that's a prime tenet of animism, is not only that you care about the land in a sort of generalized, hi, it's Earth Day, I love the earth sort of way, but you care about the land because you live in a symbiotic kinship with all of this. That this place that holds the bones of your ancestors is a place for which you have responsibility. There's a beautiful word that we don't use nearly enough, and that's tending. That mutual aid societies tend to their members. They tend to each other. Tending, same root as the word tender. So somebody who does tending is a tender. And we all know what tenderness is. So tending, when we can open up a place in our hearts, open up a place in our spiritual practice where we can begin to tend not only ourselves, our family groups, both families of blood and intentional families, when we can broaden that out to all the beings and all, then we begin to understand what it means to live in an integrated culture that brings with it sustainability, which we don't even talk about really anymore, can bring with it resilience, can bring with it the possibility that our species might in fact continue on this planet. And that's kind of up for grabs right now. I had a disturbing moment, I will say, a few weeks back when I was watching an interview with David Attenborough. And the person interviewing him, they were talking about his latest film thing where it's all about what's happening to the planet. I mean, Attenborough's extraordinary, and he's just extraordinary. And the interviewer said to him, well, what gives you hope these days? And Attenborough looked blankly. He kind of blinked at him and he said, nothing gives me hope. There's no hope. We have to keep doing what we do. Those of us who care, those of us who love the place, we have to do what we do while standing in a place of such incredibly deep grief that it's almost hard to stand up. This was David Attenborough. So all of us may be working against the clock, the sort of universal, the geologic clock. We may be working against that clock. There are things we can do. There are things we can do, including mutual aid, and I want to talk a little tiny bit about two other things that are mutual aid related. And I realize I'm talking mostly about human communities and not so much about the communities outside of that, but it's the human communities that are in such dire straits right now. There's a group in the Low Country that I think they started this, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, that put up what they call little blessing boxes. And they are called Low Country blessing boxes, and they are now all over the place. But they're like the little libraries that we saw 10, 15 years ago. We're in a community. People would bring books that they had read, and they would pick out books that their neighbors had left in the little library, so they could share books back and forth. Well, books are good. I'm a writer and a reader. Books are very good. You know what's good too? Food. So what they did in the Low Country, because what they found is that they were having some distribution issues with their food pantries. And there were all these levels of bureaucracy between the food arriving as donations and the food going out to feed hungry people. So they just started stocking these boxes with food. And what they use often are leftover newspaper kiosk boxes, you know, the one where you get your free little paper, or you put in a quarter and the paper comes out, or $1.50, I guess is what papers cost now. So they bought up a bunch of those, and that are metal, and they are dry, so the food stays dry, and they station them in all sorts of places. And they got permission from the landowner to do it. A lot of times they are in front of churches or in the beautiful manicured lawn at the church. And they fill them up. So somebody checked it every day to see if there was food in it or not food in it. So there was some responsibility there too. But you could go and you could take out food if you didn't have any food. But also, if you had just been to the grocery store and you got your box of your bag of of food that will be saved, you know, good food, and you bring your cans and you stick them in. So you could do that. So you could fill up the box, or you can take stuff away from the box. Yes, there are problems sometimes. Sometimes people come and they take it all and they take it away and they have no intention of eating it. Who knows what they do with it? And sometimes people leave inappropriate things like a bottle of homemade whiskey in the. That's why they have someone who checks them every day to make sure it's non-perishable food items, that somebody didn't come and leave something inappropriate. So there are some checks and balances that you can do, but basically they work really well. And people have access to food. Now there's a city in Britain called Todmorden, and I'm going to spell that for you because it's not spelled the way it's pronounced. It's Todmorden, Todmorden, and it's in Yorkshire. And I was there, 4 years ago now. I was there as an elder woofer, which was a lot of fun. If you're not familiar with woofing, it's where people travel. Seasonal workers travel from farm to farm, usually beautiful organic farms, and they plant, they tend, they harvest, and they are fed yummy food, and they aren't paid usually at all or not very much. So I contacted these folks early on because I loved what they were doing in their village, really. It's not a very big town. They have a thing, and you can look this up, and I invite you to do that, called Incredible Edible Todmorden. The idea they came up with, and it's just brilliant, and it works in their community, and I don't know how many other communities it would work in, but it is spreading all over Britain. They were, their town was a market town. It was driven, frankly, by the wool industry. And when the wool industry collapsed, they decided to do something completely different. And so what they did was they took all of the community-owned property and they grew food on it. And if there was, the example I give is the police department has raised beds in front, and they would monocrop. Each person who was responsible for these little gardens monocropped. And when you were ready to go get your veg for the day, you would walk through town, you would meet your neighbors, you'd pull some carrots from here and some lettuce from here, you'd take some tomatoes here, and then you also were monocropping in your yard. So it's an extraordinary thing, and I invite you to look that up. But what I really want you to consider is that we, as this island of misfit toys, we have a wonderful opportunity now to embrace the concept of animism, of things being completely, all things being ensouled and being all our relations, that we can look to indigenous societies to see how they accomplished it, and that we can begin to pull things in locally in a way where we have genuine agency, and we can make a difference not only in our lives, but in the lives of the people around us. And through social media, we can share those ideas out. So as you come up with ideas in your community, I invite you to send me an email about that. My email is info@myvillagewitch.com. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook a lot because I want to hear what you're doing. And I want you to share what it is you're doing with the rest of the world. Because just like incredible edible Todmorden led to incredible edible Ramsgate and other cities in Britain, the little blessing boxes went from the Low Country to the Midwest to California. These are ideas of mutual aid based in animistic principles and permaculture design that help us not only to grow healthier communities, to integrate the other into our crazy island of misfit toys, and to begin to be resilient in the face of all that comes near us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Byron. It was a most inspiring teaching. I thought I would give you some history of how GreenSong came to be here. You know, we tend to think our big ideas come from maybe one source and we can't remember what it was. I can date the beginning, not date, I can't date it to the day, but I can tell you when the germ of GreenSong was first planted. I was 17. It was the spring of 1948. And my boyfriend said, "Hey, there's a folk singer coming to the college tonight. You want to go hear it?" Well, folk music was still a kind of a secluded kind of music. People that were educated knew about Alan Lomax and his son and that sort of thing. But it was not well known where we were, at any rate. So I said sure, and we went. I've always loved many kinds of music. The folk singer was so unknown that the college only gave him a classroom to do his work. It was jammed. College students are always ahead of the norm, aren't they? So there he was, tall, skinny, only 10 years older than myself, as it turned out. And he gave us a program of music that included everybody. He had people singing in that room till the music burst forth all the way out. And he had songs that spoke of real things, of real sorrows, of real joys, and many ways to change things. That was Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. Woody first, he was older than Pete, but for many, many years after that, these two people, and separately and together, changed the face of the laboring America. From temporary workers in the California grape fields and all like that, and coal miners and all. Their music was meaningful, had a great tune. All of it has a tune you can sing to and it stays in your head. But nothing happened between me and Pete at that point, except I was thrilled with the music. Fast forward 28 years. I had married, raised a family, and divorced, and was making my living doing arts and crafts. Pete, up there near Beacon, New York, he and a group of people had built a sloop called the Clearwater, and they were sailing around doing concerts and inviting vendors, craftspeople, to take up the space too. They were trying to clean the river, the Hudson River. They did, incidentally. It didn't take too many years before they got the money together to clean the river, and now you can eat the fish out of it. It is no longer poisoned. From that point on, I followed Pete's career as a singer, as a song leader. He was part of the Weavers, which was a very well-known folk group, as folk singing groups came to be. And gradually, I got to the point that after his concerts, I'd sit and talk to him. I have claimed that he was my mentor. He would have laughed at that. He said, "I never taught you anything. You woke up to your own potential," which is what he always said to people. You have it in you to change the world. And then things quieted down after the 70s, when I was doing arts and crafts and moved on in my life. And in late 90s, I began to think again of, I wanted to put on an event that was focused on music to shift perspective, which is what Pete did. And yet I felt like there were still learning that people could do outside of the music if we had speakers to tell them what was potential. And I began to ask Pete. I talked to him on the phone. I went up to Beacon several times to sit with him. He was generous with his time. And he said, "Elspeth, this is a hybrid event you're talking about. It will be more difficult to advertise and to attract, but if you push it through, it will make it." He said, "It's what I've tried to do, bring in more than one kind of thing to support the music." And in 2010, we worked together, Nybor and I, and our friend John Grastoff worked with Nancy Darwin, who is a specialist in creating nonprofit corporations. And we spent a lot of time doing that. And we incorporated GreenSong as a nonprofit. And in 2011, we put on the first GreenSong, close to Atlanta, Georgia. Primarily music, some really great music. I remember Andrew McKnight and Emerald Rose were two of our music acts. We had a couple of workshops, small attendance, 60 or 70 people. Everybody said, "Do it again, do it again." However, in 2011, and again in 2013, we had the second GreenSong here in Virginia, close to Winchester. Both of them were very, very slim audience, and I had hired expensive people. So fortunately, we had a small inheritance, and I paid all the bills out of that. We went down about $6,000 or $7,000, maybe $8,000 with those two events, and I had no more money, and we couldn't do it again. So time rocked on until early last year, when I thought about I would be 90 years old this year, and I wanted to celebrate by having GreenSong come to fruition. I knew that my abilities are limited, and so I invited in a number of gifted, amazing, hardworking people, and we had a team that put it together. The virus happened and we couldn't do it. But we brought pieces of what we had planned, and that's what we're going to show you tonight, what we are showing you. Our first musician is a person that I've known only a few years, but he was part of the beginning of GreenSong 2020. Scott C.Brooks, he's very well known for his music, for his slide guitar. It's not exactly what that is, but he has a number of different kinds of music. He plays fingerstyle, he plays back porch style, he plays blues, and he is here tonight to begin our series with his very wonderful music. May I bring to you Scott C.Brooks, musician extraordinary.
You ready to go? All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Scott C. Brooks. I'm an Appalachian style guitarist with slide guitar, and I play a little bit of European styles of slide guitar. We're going to go explore some of that. We're going to start off some Appalachian blues called Clarksburg Blues. Thank you. All right, so this next song, a song I wrote about some of the unrest going around the U.S. these days. This song is called Who's That Calling? And wrote it after seeing some of the footage that was coming out of Portland at the time, and different protests, people not wanting to be killed in their home. So this one's dedicated to all the BLM people out there who are just fighting for the right to live. Gotta go to you girls everywhere. And it gotta blow the fence just get the low. They'll shoot your daddy in the head. Who's that calling? Who's that calling out for me? Who's that calling? Who's that calling? Who's that calling over there? They killed your mama, they killed your daddy. As she's a marching through the square. Who's that cold? Who's that cold? Who's that All right. Let's switch gears here about and folks, a lot of things we do is about sustainability, and I'm also very big in environmental justice because one doesn't come pretty much without the other. And beginning of the last century, there were two men trying to make life a little better for the working man in Boston. And then the state of Massachusetts decided to execute him for trumped up charges, but basically the crime of union organizing. And this is in a Woody Guthrie song. It's called Two Good Men. Say there, did you hear the news? Sacco worked at trimming. Ben said it was a peddling man, and he pushed his fish cart with his hand. Zach was born across the sea, somewhere over Italy. Ben said he sailed the ocean blue, and he ended up in Boston too. Two good men, a long time gone. Two good men, a long time gone. Two good men, a long time gone. And left us here to sing their song. Circle's wife, 3 children had. Circle was a family man. Ben said he was a dreaming man, was always in his head. Jack earned his bread and butter, being that factory's best shoe cutter. And Ben said he spoke both day and night, and he taught them poor workers how to fight. I'll tell you if you ask me about that old payroll robbery. And the 2 clerks was killed in the South Main tree on the street down Bedman Tree. Judge Dare told his friends around that he'd cut them radicals down. Anarchist bastards was the name that Judge Dare called these good men. And I'll tell you the prosecutors' names, they were Katzman, Adams, Williams, and Kane. Judge and lawyers, they strutted her down, and then they done more tricks than horses, circus clowns. Now there's two good men, a long time gone. Two good men, a long time gone. Sacco and Vincetti are gone. And they left me here to sing this song. He ducked here in 1908, and then he slept along America's dirty streets. And he told the workers to organize, and on the state electric chair he dies. And all you people ought to be like me and work like Sacco and City. And every day find some more ways to fight on the union side for the workers' rights. And I ain't got time to tell this tale where the Dixie moves is on my trail. I remember to tell you two songs of these two good men who taught me how to live. And all you people in Suwasso's Lane, would you sing this song and sing it plain? And all you people that's coming along, won't you jump in with me and sing this song? Good men, a long time gone. Two good men, a long time gone. City are gone, left me here to sing this song. Left us here to sing this song. All right, thank you. All right, I live up in the middle of the Allegheny Ridge, on Allegheny Mountain, otherwise known as the Allegheny Front. Moved up in the lowlands of D.C. and Baltimore, where I was doing shows down there for a while. And I wrote this song about 10, 15 years ago, and all my friends that were still working down in D.C. thought we were crazy for making this long commute. And now the seas are rising, and the temperature is getting bad, and the weather patterns are changing, and the rain is changing. People don't look at me and my wife so crazy no more. Now they're starting to think about following us up them hills. So when I wrote this song, everybody kind of laughed at it. And you get the fires in California and out west and pretty much the entire West Coast now. And you get the Gulf Coast hurricanes, and suddenly a song called Climate Refugee don't seem so damn silly. So well, I won't be a climate refugee. Be a climate refugee. Let's head up to the mountains, oh, folks follow me. We won't have to die no refugee. I seen how you love those refugees. I seen how you love those refugees. You tell them folks go screw themselves like you're some man from Galilee. You don't seem to like them refugees. gonna slave under rich boys. 'Cause I'd rather my family starve than to break a sweat for you. I ain't gonna slave under rich boys. Head up to these hills that all be free. To these hills that all be free. Everybody tries to cage us, they know how to bury them really deep. Let's head up to the hills and all be free. Don't wanna die a refugee. You don't wanna die a refugee. But brother, I look after you. If you look after me, and we won't have to become no refugees. Won't be a climate refugee. No, I won't be a climate refugee. Let's head up to the mountains. Folks, follow me. We won't have to be a refugee. No, we won't have to become no refugee. Thank you. All right. So this next song is about always being down on your luck when everybody tries to come back up. Somebody comes along to knock you down. And the entertainment industry got hit really hard in March. It's like overnight we became like sex workers. Everybody's like, can't work, can't work. They didn't help. Some of us don't even qualify for all the unemployment because we're all down on our luck. And this is a song about, back to my roots of blues. This is a song about trying to get back up and the man coming to kneecap you every single time you try and stand. I've been down so long, how can I ever get up again? I've been down so long, how can I get up again? Every time I try to stand, oh man, he come kneecap me again. The bus is gonna kick my teeth. The doctor gonna pick my pulse. The boss don't care if I get sick and die. Try this shit me in the world. Oh, I can't stand it. Every time I try to stand, oh, man, he come, he can't be again. They threw me in the street. I lost a job to pay my rent. They said they're gonna work in the warehouse on Sunday. They're gonna start me off at a slave wedge till kneecap me again. I ain't seen my lover, so I don't know when. They got me locked up in here. I can't afford no freedom. Every time I try to stay, oh, the man comes and he can't be again. Thank you. All right. Went back more into some social activism. So, this has been a while since I wrote this song. I was flying around the country at the time, doing shows, and can't remember where I was, probably stuck in Denver or something like that at the airport, and I was watching the TV that they always have on at the airport, and it was right after the Parkland shooting. One of the Parkland kids getting on the TV complaining about getting shot at in school, and they cut away to the next thing, and it's some yahoo saying like, "That boy deserves to be shot." And I was like, I'm looking like, well, that's probably why he's on the TV saying, "Don't shoot me." So, but then I noticed there was a big divide, and basically a bunch of kids basically saying, we don't want to get shot in school, and a bunch of adults saying, well, that's not your choice. And I'm like, technically that is. But there were just so many lies they're telling them kids, and this is a song about beating them down and breaking them down. And it's a song called "Beat 'Em Down." Beat 'em down, break 'em down, tell those kids you're alive. Schoolyard ain't no place for fun, now a place to die. Once again, here we go. The year was 01A. Why tears started streaming down, and they joined the back of fate. Beat 'em down, break 'em down, tell those kids you're alive. Y'all ain't no place for fun, and it ain't no place to die. When the children started walking out, beat 'em down, you did. God went over killing land to save a way for dying kids. Beat 'em down, break 'em down, tell those kids you're alive. Oh, y'all ain't no place for fun, now you're
your place to die. They started screaming oh so loud, beat me down to say I'll still be here, I'll be living on, and I'm pissing on your grave. Break on down, tell those kids you're alive. Schoolyard ain't no place for fun now, ain't no place to die. To the air, there's the sky, angels flying by. They'll ever yell, who make it, that school ain't no place to die. School ain't no place to die. School ain't no place to die. Take on down, beat on down, tell those kids you're lying. Schoolyard ain't no place for me now, a place to die. Schoolyard ain't no place for me now, a place to die. Thank you. Speaking of death, this is a season of death in reverse. So this is a song called Bear Pine Boards. It's been on one of my albums for the longest time, and it's about basically being able to finally relax when you die. You lay down your your little wooden shack, and everything you got goes with you, and everybody you know just kind of oozes away from the grave. So. Just me on my pine floor, a moon on some sunny day. This small shed is where I lay, and I'll move on when the sun shines again. It's me on my dear pine floor. Lay down to take my nap. Every day I hope is on my back. Just me on my bare pine floor. I move on some sunny knocking at my door, and they know it do on me. Sometime soon they'll let me be. Ebb and flow, I move on some sunny day. Just me on my ebb and flow, I move on some sunny day. Thank you. You guys are just tuning in again. I'm Scott Brooks at www.scottcbrooks.com, and I got a PayPal link, paypal.me/Scott C. Brooks. At least that's what they're telling me it is. So, this next song, again, channeling a social justice and renewable, harvest what you sow kind of thing. The song's called Destitution. Went to school for a while, but I had to quit and get a job. I went to school for a while, but I had to quit and get a job. Destitution, it's my prostitution. Hell runs from 9 to 5. I work so hard, owed my soul to a 5 to 9. Work too damn hard, told my soul to a 5 and 9. Destitution, it's my prostitution. Hell runs from 9 to 5. I've been waiting for 3 years to get me a dollar's raise. Waiting for 3 years to get me a dollar's raise. Destitution is my prostitution. Hell runs from 9 to 5. Won't fire me, I hear, 'cause I want my paid overtime. Fire me, I hear, 'cause I want paid overtime. But it's destitution, it's my prostitution. Hell runs from 9 to 5. Live a nightmare, slave away for those who hate. Live a nightmare, slave away for those who hate. It's destitution, it's our prostitution. Hell runs behind. Hell runs from 9 to 5. keep retuning this guitar. I go from D to D minor because I don't think D can be sufficiently sad enough sometimes. All right. This next song is fitting for the times, to say the least. It was written in the late 1930s in Italy. And it was written for Mussolini, not as a ballad, by the Italian resistance fighters. And the song's called Bella Ciao. And I'm going to play this in an Italian slide style that I learned while I was overseas for a little bit, hanging out with all kinds of folks. When I get old, they get hungry. Telling me, mi partisano, oh Bella Ciao, goodbye, beautiful. The world is waking out my window, and the shades break to hell. Partisan, Bella Ciao, goodbye, beautiful. Lay a rose upon my chest here, as one who would die for freedom. Partisano, oh Bella Ciao, goodbye, beautiful. The jock boots are marching at the street, dear, and they are stopping outside my door. Partisano, oh bella ciao, goodbye, beautiful. Lay a rose upon my chest, dear, as one who has died for freedom. Thank you. All right, I'm going to end things on an instrumental. Again, I'd like to thank Grandma for offering me to come down here and help celebrate the GreenSong movement. This last song is a song called Jockey Full of Bourbon by Tom Waits, and it's going to be an instrumental version of that song.
Halloween, Samhain. I'm Scott C. Brooks, www.scottcbrooks.com, paypal.me/Scott C. Brooks. Thank you very much, and happy birthday.
That was lovely, Scott. Thank you so very much. You've made an excellent beginning for a whole trip. I remind you again about the online auction at greensongfestival.com. And for now, we'll sign off until next week. Come back with us. Thank you.
As I went walking the ribbon of highway, saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. Sing it out now. This land was made for you and me. Followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, while all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. Everybody.
And thus ends our first episode of our 8-week Saturday evening Changemaker series. Now, of course, this video is going to go instantly to replay, so if you haven't done so yet, please message your friends and share this video and spread the word about GreenSong and GreenSong's mission and this 8-week Changemaker series. I've been having a little wine while I've been listening to the blues. Also, don't forget that we have the donate link at bit.ly/gsdonate. And until next week, stay safe, much love, and blessed be.